Welcome. Today we will try to demystify Microsoft Copilot and hopefully answer all your questions around it. For more information about today's program, make sure you check out all the useful links located at the end of this presentation, which you will get a copy of if you've registered. So with me today is Demetrius Rogers, who's Planet's CTO and former Commonwealth of Virginia's Deputy Chief Operating Officer. Demetrius is also heading up our Microsoft OpenAI Charter membership and Jumpstart program for Copilot. Also with me today, we've assembled a great team of folks to help answer all your questions, so please put them in the chat or the Q&A. Joining me today are Jen Mason, who is our Vice President of Workforce Transformation and Learning, Pierre-Yves Delacote, who is our Organizational Change Management Architect, and he leads up our OCM practice, and finally, Keith Ward, a fellow cloud strategist who joined us last year from Microsoft, specializing in Azure OpenAI, cognitive services, and secure research. Thanks, everyone, for joining us here today. And thank you all for joining us. Our folks are ready and standing by for questions. And with that, let's quickly do a quick poll question. I think Casey's going to go ahead and launch this, but we want to know who's with us today. So if you could just really quickly, these are anonymous, just let us know where you're coming from, and we'd appreciate that. Next, let's talk about the agenda. First, we'll start with a Copilot overview along with talking through some short demos of each. Then we'll have a discussion on understanding the Copilot options. We'll talk a little bit about security with Copilot, the Copilot prerequisites, getting ready, helpful links, and of course, we'll get to all the questions that were submitted that you submitted already in advance. And if we have time at the very end, we can even do some more live demos. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. We got a big agenda today and lots of folks on the call here. Demetrius, please go ahead and give us an overview of Copilot and try to start making some sense of all this for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Welcome, everybody. I'm happy to be here with you today. So, as you can see up on the screen here, the Copilot universe, Microsoft has embedded AI assistants in it. Either has today, it will be available today, or it will be available tomorrow. And the plan is to have an AI assistant for every business product that Microsoft offers. As you can see, it's expansive. It includes everyone from your developers to your end users for modern work, to your data team, your AI, and even the security products. So it's an expansive list, and it's something that is on the strategic roadmap for Microsoft to have AI assistants wherever for everyone and anything. Well, we're here today. We're going to talk more. We're going to focus really on Microsoft 365, and we'll talk about some other aspects of Microsoft and what you need to do to get ready for it. So Microsoft 365, a lot of people ask me, so what is it, right? It's really focused around Copilot AI for your business data, taking advantage of all of your current security policies that you have set up in your environment. It ensures that all of your information remains in your compliance boundary. It does not go outside to the internet for Microsoft 365. It is integrated into every application that you have, from Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, etc. Users actually get to decide when to use it, what to use, what to modify or discard in terms of what comes out of that AI assistant. And the great thing about an AI assistant, because it's artificial intelligence, it will actually learn, right? And it can perform more sophisticated tasks and queries as time goes on. So we expect it to improve as you learn as well. Here, as you can see, Microsoft 365 Copilot is embedded across these Microsoft applications: Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and Teams. We will highlight, provide some demos here in the next couple of slides of these. And we'll start off with Microsoft Word. Here you'll see an example of where Copilot is being asked to draft a 2-page project proposal, right? From the data to the document. You just upload that document. And then, as you can see, it will generate it automatically. You can even ask it to do additional steps like, hey, make this third paragraph a little bit more concise. I also want to change the tone of the document for it to be more casual. And then create a 1-page draft based on that rough outline. Copilot will automatically take all of these steps inside of Microsoft Word, specifically by the natural language prompts that you give it. As you can see, that happened very quickly. It's a very powerful tool. And as you begin to utilize Copilot, and using the prompt engineering features, you will be able to, with accurate prompt engineering, you'll be able to get more concise data every single time. Now, we'll go to the next one. Here's an example of where you can ask Copilot to take a document and create a 5-slide presentation out of that document. And you want to consolidate that into 3 pages. And also reformat that document to 3 specific bullets into columns, each with a picture. As you can see, you just describe it here in the window. You select the document you want to use, and the magic happens. Very impressive. From an Excel perspective, right? I know a lot of, if you're like me, I'm not the king of Excel. I mean, I wish I could do things better. And sometimes I have to ask my cohorts. Well, with Copilot, that's the cohort I have to ask. That's my AI assistant. Here's an example of where you're being, an example of where you can give a breakdown of sales by type, take the data in a spreadsheet. You can break it out and even generate charts for visualizations, and you can model how that goes. You actually can even ask Copilot to do 3 or 4 different visualizations to display the data different ways. And it will actually create a separate tab in Excel with that information. It's a very powerful tool in Excel. Copilot and Outlook. One of the things that I enjoy the most when I come back from vacation is catching up on emails, especially long ones. Here's a great example of where you can say, hey, can you summarize this email or summarize what I missed while I was out? And here, as you can see on the screen, Copilot is actually presenting a summarization of this specific email into a single sentence to say, hey, this is what this email is about. You can also choose to draft a response to emails by thanking them or asking for additional details. You can also ask it to write it and make it more professional, or you can just choose to invite folks out to lunch and learn as you look to roll out a new project, and Copilot can take all those steps simply through natural language. Here's a great example of in Teams. I know a lot of times you may jump into a Teams meeting and you may be a couple minutes late. Here's a perfect example where you can ask Copilot as you come in, if you're 5 minutes, 2 minutes late, hey, what has been discussed what have I missed while in this meeting? And it will quickly put in the chat what you missed, summarize what you missed. You can also ask it to create a table of pros and cons. And you can also say, hey, what decisions were made? Here is an example of you're saying, hey, how did the group feel about the inventory status? So, this was being discussed in the meeting. And as you can see, Copilot gave output based on the sentiment and what was discussed in the meeting and gave you a summary of what those feelings were. It's a very powerful tool, so you don't have to ask someone what happened or, hey, how did this happen? Or what did I miss? How did the group feel? You can get sentiment as well.
So Demetrius, a lot of folks are very confused about Teams Premium versus Copilot. And the way I like to look at it, right, is Teams Premium is a very powerful tool. And it came out even before Copilot, but it still used AI to generate like the meeting recap. But where it falls short is that you just can't interact with it, right? So if you want to take that meeting recap and say, now give me the 5, bullets, or summarize this, or turn it into a PowerPoint, that's what Copilot and Teams then takes it, or the other Microsoft 365 app Copilots then do and take it to the next level. So, make sure you understand that Teams Premium is not the same thing as Copilot and Teams, and they work hand in hand together for really incredible flexibility and capabilities.
That's a fantastic point, Ken. Yes. With the AI assistant, Copilot and Teams, it actually allows for continuous interaction as opposed to taking one simple action.
Yep. All right, let's move on to business chat.
Yes, absolutely. So here is a great example of where you want to ask Copilot to bring together some data or documents, because perhaps you have a meeting with a potential client or customer that you have. You can say, hey, I want to know, can you summarize all chats, emails, and documents that I have about this particular customer? Copilot will comb through your SharePoint sites, your emails, your Teams channels, and pull together a list of everything that has that it can find on that customer and put it right here. You can also say, hey, what are the particular risks or things I need to know about? and it will prioritize those, as you can see in this example here. This example shows that where it says, hey, production and supply chain disruptions remain an ongoing concern for this customer. So you can prepare for that to come up and prepare in advance to speak to that. This is data that is gathered from everything that you have access to, whether it's in your email, your OneDrive, etc. Power Platform. This is a great illustration of the advancements that Microsoft has been pushing for Power Platform. And the one thing I will call out here is that you'll notice 2021, they introduced natural language stuff to Power Apps and the Power BI. Then they added it to Power Automate in 2022. And then in Power Apps, they added some image and Figma applications. But in 2023, with the introduction of Copilot and natural language processing, as you can see here, it focuses on natural language for Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Pages, Power BI. We don't have a demo of this, but we will be looking based on your feedback. I know that Ken sent out a list of topics.
Figure out where she's moving.
A list of topics that you guys may be interested in, and Power Platform Copilot is one of those options. So if this is something you want to see a future topic on, we're happy to do it.
Just want to remind folks, if you're unmuted, go ahead and mute. If not, Casey, if you can take a look at the unmutes and go ahead and mute them until we ask for questions at the end. Thank you.
Okay, next slide. So when we start talking about Copilot, I've been involved in several conversations, and I'm sure you all have as well, where when you say, and as you can see from the first slide of navigating the Copilot universe, right, it's saying, hey, when you say Copilot, which Copilot are you talking about? As you can see here, here's a quick illustration of a personal Copilot, Copilot with commercial data protection, and Copilot for Microsoft 365. And what I want to do is just take a moment here to kind of explain what this is about, or explain the differences here. So Copilot is essentially your personal Copilot. It's public, it's free. You can download it on your iPhone or your computer, and it's essentially the GPT large language model, right? And it's AI-powered web search, answers, and content generation, just like ChatGPT is. Copilot with commercial data protection is where you can actually use this for entering data for your business, right, or work, and without concern that it's going to be available or published on the internet. Unlike Copilot or ChatGPT, Copilot commercial data protection, your data remains, what you put into it is not subject to be placed out on the internet or reused. And then you have Copilot for Microsoft 365, which is the per user per month charge. The retail price you see there is $30. Obviously, that could vary based on your EA and other things like that, but that's the retail price that you see.
Yeah, so Demetrius, I think it was about the first week of January, all of a sudden I got a notification about the rebranding, the renaming of Copilot. So, just like Microsoft rebranded Defender for Defender products, right? I think we're seeing the same thing with Copilot. It's going to be Copilot for X, Copilot for Power Platform, Copilot for Teams, Copilot for everything, right? The basic Copilot used to be Copilot Edge, right?
And then yes, and then it was Bing Chat for Enterprise. Right?
Yeah. Depending on whether you're logged in or not is kind of what makes the difference as far as the protections and so forth, right?
Absolutely.
So when you hear Bing Chat, Copilot Bing Chat or something like that, that's now been replaced with just that's where you start. That's Copilot. That's where you start.
Absolutely.
Got it. So I was very confusing when I first saw it. I just know a lot of folks probably haven't heard that yet. So I just want to make sure it's really clear that Copilot, the very start of this is just plain old Copilot, which was the old Copilot Edge for Edge and Bing. Yeah.
Yes, so if you're looking at the free version of Copilot, it's out on the web and you were using it on your phone, you're using Copilot, right? And then you have Copilot with commercial data protection. Now the Copilot personal Copilot is new as well. Potentially the Copilot with commercial data protection was available with certain Windows licenses, E3 and E5. So the recent announcement, along with that rebranding effort, introduced the personal Copilot, as well as changing the name of Beam Chat Enterprise to Copilot with commercial data protection.
So yeah, let me go to the next slide. I think that'll help a little bit too.
Yes. So here, what you can see here is this was the formerly Beam Chat Enterprise, as you can see. And I think what's important here is your chat data. For those of you on the call who may have used Chat GPT, I'm sure most of you probably have at some point when all the rage, it was in the news almost every day and all the rage was about it. Chat It saves all your chat prompts. If you use Copilot, if you use Bing Chat Enterprise, Chat GPT, I'm sorry, if you use Chat GPT, you can go in and see historical things that you've asked for. Within Copilot with commercial data protection, that data is not saved. Your chat prompts and responses are discarded. No one at Microsoft can view your data, and your data is not used at all to train any large language models. As you can see here, in the box where it says ask me anything, it specifically states your personal and company data are protected in this chat.
And then the other place is up here on the upper right. So once you finally sign in, right, that'll turn green and say it's protected. Anything you're doing right now is protected.
Absolutely. So a lot of the concerns that you have in terms of being concerned about corporate data being placed out on the web, this uses the web resources, but it does not expose your corporate data and your private IP.
And that's the key right there. Thanks,
Yes.
Demetrius.
Not a problem.
All right, so let's put these two together, Demetrius.
Yes, and so when you're talking about Copilot, remember Copilot is current web data, meaning it is searching the internet for the content that it will return. Copilot for Microsoft 365 is looking across your company data. Now, Microsoft 365 Copilot will use the company data, but it's not all company data. It's the company data that you have access to. And so what we're going to get into based on that is, hey, a huge concern is what will surface up from AI? What will AI surface? It's important to note here that Copilot for Microsoft 365 is based on your policies, user permissions, as I stated earlier, but what you specifically or the user has access to today.
Right, and if you've been around Microsoft 365 for quite a few years, you probably have heard of Delve, right? Delve was the way that used to surface what you had permissions to and what you didn't, and so just think of it that way. If you have access to something, it's fair game for it to find it, right?
Yes, absolutely. And this is where having a good data governance strategy comes into play, and we're going to get into that now, right? So here is a chart of how Microsoft 365 works. But you can see it has access to the prompts, and that's the flow chart. I'm not going to walk through that flow chart. I think a lot of this has been displayed numerous times, but the best thing that comes out is best practice for M365 data access, data protection, data lifecycle. I get asked questions all the time. Hey, what are the best practices for Copilot? Well, the best practices for Copilot is best practice for M365 data, because that's what it leverages, right? And so we're going to get into some of the things that you should be looking at as you prepare, whether you're at the beginning of looking at this, or you may have already committed to buy some licenses, or maybe even purchased some already. And you want to try to figure out, is this something I can roll out to my entire enterprise? So what I want to talk through next is how do we address these specific pillars, or how should you be addressing those three specific pillars? So the concern about data access, obviously, is oversharing, right? Are documents too accessible? Sensitivity. Am I identifying and protecting my most sensitive content? Will that be exposed when I introduce these AI assistants into my environment? How recent is this data? Is the data simply so stale, or it doesn't exist anymore? What's the data lifecycle look like for this data? Here are some of the steps that you can take. And again, these recommendations are not specific to Copilot. These are recommendations specific for optimal data governance. From a data access, you want to start looking at, hey, how do you manage your private and public sites? How am I managing site permissions? Are these site permissions being reviewed and what is the frequency of that review? From a data protection standpoint, have I identified sensitive content? How confident am I that this has been done? Am I willing to stand up in front of my stakeholders and say, hey, we have accurately identified our sensitive content and we're able to roll this out? That's a question for you and your organization. You want to be able to limit content exposition, and you want to make sure you implement sensitivity labels and DLP. From a data lifecycle perspective, you want to look at deleting inactive sites and removing obsolete data. So one of the things I would be asking in my, as I've been in positions and run large enterprises, I would start asking my team questions about, hey, how are we going to achieve these things? How are we going to ensure data access is accurate? How are we going to protect the data? Here, what you see on the screen is based on your license type, the things that are available to you today, right? You can look at from a data access perspective. You can start looking at asking your site owners to review permissions, reviewing those sites, moving public groups to private, looking at your group expiration policies for inactive teams and group sites, implementing container labeling, access reviews. From data protection standpoint, you're identifying sensitive content with Content Explorer, Content Search, Defender for Cloud Apps, overshare sensitive content. So someone says, how do I know if it's overshared? You can start looking at products like SharePoint Advanced Management to help you with that. Implement DLP policies and Defender for Cloud Apps, and you can use Purview for some of these things, especially on Content Explorer. Detect inactive sites, implement deletion policies. So those are some short-term practical measures.
Yep. And what I really like there, Demetrius, is what you did was you took this and broke it down by license type. So even if you have M365 E3, there is still plenty of capabilities in that license stack to be able to protect your data. So definitely take a look at these. If you don't know what you have inside your M365 licensing, please reach out to your cloud strategist, and we'll be happy to do a license review for you.
So next, the thing is, all right, these are short-term practical measures. These are the tactical items. What am I doing from a strategic standpoint? Again, looking at based on what you have, you can say, hey, is this an add-on? Is this included in my license types? But being able to get to that next level of restricting access controls, enhancing your access reviews by leveraging ML, looking at entitlement management. Again, these are further capabilities around that you can look to Microsoft tool sets to use, like Purview, which is in the Purview family, I should say. Being able to auto-lift and encrypt and restrict access control lists for sensitive information, looking at information barriers, and make sure that you are looking to refine and create a comprehensive data lifecycle management strategy if it doesn't exist today. So what you see is both the tactical items as well as long-term enterprise-wide initiatives that we're talking to our customers about as they look to prepare for their AI journey. A lot of questions are coming up.
And I think, Demetrius, we actually had a question about how AI can help with the life cycle of a user onboarding, offboarding. And then for those of you who are not familiar with it, entitlement management could definitely help there. So definitely take a look at that one especially if you're a G5 or E5 user there. So just want to bring that up since I know that question came up in advance of the show today.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the reason why the permissions thing has been such a concern, as I don't know the background of everyone on the call, but we all know most people practice role-based access control. They do a really good job at that. They assign a user by the role. Now, where there's a level of opportunity, a lot of times is how often was that actual role permissions been revisited since it was created? Right. And so that's where you start looking at some of the things that I can do as I look to prepare for my AI journey in terms of being able to make it so the CISO or the operations folks or the CIO can feel warm and fuzzy as they look to go down the AI journey.
All right. It looks like we got lots of questions in the windows, and it seems like our team of experts, PY and Jen and Keith, are answering away. So we'll get back to those in a few minutes if there's things that haven't been answered. But hey, Demetrius, let's talk about some prerequisites. What are some things that we need to have in place before we get started with Copilot?
Yes, absolutely. So office For Office licensing is Office 365 or M365 E3 or E5 licenses. A3 or A5 for faculty and staff. The E5, E3 and E5 license was a recent update for Microsoft as of last week. Previously, it was M3 or M5, and Microsoft with the announcements of Personal Copilot and the rebranding also reduced the minimum quantity commitment to purchase Copilot from M365 from 300, and also made it available for their E3 and E5 customers. So it is, if you were kind of turned off by the initial, hey, I gotta go buy 300 at minimum, that requirement is no longer there.
Sure.
Azure AD, based accounts, OneDrive, online and desktop access. You guys can read. The one thing that I will call out is new teams. Depending on where you are in your journey, I know sometimes a lot of folks were using the legacy teams. I believe that's about to be deprecated and new teams will be forced upon everyone if you haven't already rolled it out, but that is required.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the new Outlook for Windows is, I think it's mandatory. I'm not positive as well.
Yeah.
Monthly enterprise channel, while you definitely can't be on the yearly releases, right? So you need to be on something that's current because there's so much change going on in this situation here.
Yeah.
And there's the question that everyone's been asking. I know we had a bunch of questions already about it. Government cloud availability. We're thinking sometime around summer 2024. That's about the best information we have right now. But yeah, the big thing on this slide, as Demetrius said in the very beginning, there's no more minimum quantity purchase. So if you want to start piloting with Copilot, you can start doing that now with a couple of users, right? So don't worry about it. Just go ahead and get it started.
Yeah, and the thing that we talk about is as you look to do that, identify a couple of key users, maybe look at the different persona types, different permission levels, and allow you to begin that process of minimal investment. Oh, sorry. So you start looking at, hey, I'm gonna get ready for that. I've talked about the prerequisites. Now, what are my next steps? Hey, understanding your file permissions, how they've been configured. Do you have data loss prevention policies implemented? What do they look like? Do you need to update them in any way? Make sure you're cleaning out redundant, outdated content. Is your content organized? Is it public? Is it private? What are the permission sets on that? Can you tag your file with keywords? Standardize your names. Consolidate any multiple versions. One thing is key that I would like to touch on is, someone asked me the question of, if I go into Copilot and I leverage one document to create another document, and that document is labeled with specific sensitivity label, will that new document inherit that? And the answer to that question is yes. If you're pulling content from a document with a certain sensitivity label, when Copilot creates that new document, it will also inherit that sensitivity label if you're using them.
Nice. And, we've got a whole team of folks. And if I don't know if Jen and Keith are probably researching and answering questions, but if PY, Jen, or Keith, if you have anything to add to either the prerequisites or the getting ready for Copilot, please feel free to chime in at any time. We're pretty much getting close to the end here. We have some helpful links here. And 3 things I want to point out here is if you haven't tried out Copilot, you can go right to copilot.microsoft.com up here at the very top. And then there's 3 that I really want to, well, these are all great links that we researched for you to find here. But the Copilot dashboard is something new. It's in preview, and it's based on Viva Insights, and it helps your organization maximize the value of Copilot for 365. So it'll give you actionable insights to get ready to deploy AI. It'll dive into adoption stuff, and it could have a big impact on your Copilot experience. So check it out if you haven't looked at it yet, or if it's available to you, check out the Copilot dashboard. It's a Power BI dashboard that can be installed. Admin controls for Copilot down here, managing Microsoft Cloud. Everyone's wondering, how do I control this beast that now it's alive, right? So there's lots of things you can do. And there's the big things. There's a new, in the admin center, there's a new place to go for Copilot specifically. You'll see it called out there. Things like, managing how your organization interacts with Copilot in Bing, Edge, and Windows. There's some settings there. There's some settings for how to manage plugins for Copilot. There's some settings for how you handle public web content access. And obviously the data and security compliance access is there, as well as when Security Copilot comes here, you'll go through there to get to it as well if you actually purchase it. And then finally, the very bottom, this Copilot adoption is a really great place to start that contains getting ready resources. So definitely take a look at that as well. With that, we've got a bunch of questions that came in advance, and then we'll get to the ones in the chat window if there's things that we have not answered. So I would expect, Jen and Keith and PY to come off mute and let us know if there's some things that we still need to address, if there's anything there. But there was some questions about explaining how the breakdown of Copilot pricing works. $30 is the baseline. What services are included? I think, Demetrius, you pretty much hit on that. So I think that one's pretty good. The $30 is really based for Copilot for Microsoft 365, right? So this is the interactive experience with all the Microsoft 365 apps is what we're talking about there. And that's $30. That's the baseline right now. And it's based on, we can't go into details about, discounts off of EAs and things like that. We have no idea, right? So, talk to your sales reps, your account executives at Microsoft about that. But the baseline is $30 that's published. How can Copilot be utilized for onboarding new employees, addressing security vulnerabilities, Windows patching? I think we did a good job answering those questions today. If there's still some more questions, Ed, go ahead and come off mute and ask us those. But I think we talked a little bit about that, especially around entitlement management and that kind of thing. Can you get threat intel from Copilot? Can you integrate things like Shodan.io or MISP? I don't know, Demetri, if you want to tackle that one. I guess that's going to be more tied into the Copilot for security discussion that we'll probably do in the next few months.
That is absolutely correct. When you start looking at threat intel data and how to also have Copilot do auto remediation and other aspects for AI, that's going to be tied up into Security Copilot. That's going to be an upcoming session. That is an early preview, limited access, but we will be doing a session on that later. The M365 Copilot doesn't interact in that space.
Right. Let's see here. Like more information about the commercial data protections. I think we talked about that when you're signed into Copilot, you automatically have those protections in place there, and it's based on exactly what you have access to and what security you put in place already. It doesn't create any new security. It's using everything that's existing already. They're kind of similar to, how Delve surfaced permissions as well as any additional security protections you put on your content, right? So again, if you're logged in, you're definitely you're tied into your credentials there. It's tied into all the other security measures that you've already put in place in your tenant. We already talked about when availability for government was going to be there. That we talked about June as the possibility there. Seems like there's a lot of interest in Microsoft Teams Copilot. So, I think we'll look at possibly doing some spotlights on that in the future. And I think that's about all the questions that we had in advance. There was one question. One question was about Copilot and Teams and how it could interact with a service desk. For those of that you don't know, there's just Google or Bing. I'm sorry, I should say Bing. Go ahead and Bing Copilot and plugins, and you'll find a whole bunch of information about how you can manage plugins with Copilot. And so there might be plugins for ServiceNow or other service desk type of products there. So definitely take a look at the plugins there for that answer.
Yeah, and I also saw one question in the chat about if you're preparing for this, will it be enabled by default for E3 or E5 users, or will it wait until admins enable it? And the one thing I will add to this is it will only be enabled if you assign that user a license. So the admins actually do have to take option. It's not enabled by default for all E3 5 because it takes a license assignment to go with it. So as you start looking at how to deploy Copilot, if you want to leverage it, for a small group of users, you can assign them some licenses and take those actions there, and so you can do a completely controlled deployment. You don't have to it's not going to be a big bang just because you bought some licenses.
Yeah, and definitely take a look at that link on the helpful links page about how to manage it from an administration standpoint. It talks about what's on by default and that kind of thing. So definitely take a look at that link as well. So, as you guys are all registered for this event, you had to pick up to 3 what you're most interested in. We're going to use this data to help us, craft the next few, cloud office hours in the future. So I think there was some confusion. We didn't really word it very well. The Copilot, the standard Copilot now, right? The Copilot for the web and the Copilot for Windows is kind of the same thing, right? So our overwhelming 3 responses that we heard was Copilot, Copilot for M365, and then Copilot for Power Platform came in 3rd. And then Copilot for Security was 4th. So we're looking at doing, as we get more and more resources available to us to be able to show these things to you, we're going to be showing you some live demos and spotlights on these products. If you're interested, sounds like you are. And so be on the lookout for those announcements coming forward.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to have a series, right? And we want to
Yep.
make sure that that series is bringing as much value to you all to help you continue to learn. And we want to make sure it's on the proper focus area. It's going to give you the most bang for your buck.
Just looking at the questions in the window, Jen or PY or Keith, is there anything that needs to be answered that wasn't answered that maybe, either myself or Demetrius can answer? If not, we have a few minutes to do a live demo with Jen. So, but before we do that, while we're waiting for Jen to get set up, the poll question: how would you rate our usefulness of this program today? Please go ahead and launch that, Casey, when you get a chance. Be on the lookout for our next Cloud Office Hours on February 22nd. As we mentioned, we're going to be doing some topics around Copilot in the future, as well as getting started with MIP, data classifications, and Teams voice updates. So those are some things that were already in the works and planning. And Jen, if you're ready, are you ready? We can show a little bit of live demo. Jen Mason, come off mute, please. There. All right, I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and I'll go ahead and let you start sharing.
All right. Ken, can you see me? Can you see everything okay?
I'm not seeing your desktop. I saw it briefly for a second. Maybe try again. There, it looks like it's coming up now. Yep, I see it. Beautiful.
Okay, great. So here we are inside of an environment that has Copilot inside of it. So I'm going to just open up in some of the decks that we have. So inside of this one, inside of PowerPoint here, I'm going to come over here and click on Copilot. And it's going to pull up a banner for me. Now, please keep in mind, I am in a test environment, so it is a little bit slower than it would probably be in a production environment, but I am in a different environment here. So I can come here and I say create a presentation from a file, and it's going to pull up suggestions of files I've recently looked at. So in this one, this is a document about SharePoint intranet sites. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes, create a presentation from that. And then it's going to generate the content for me. So it is going to put it all together, come up and tell me what the agenda would be, and then start drafting out the presentation for me. So we'll give it here just a second.
Man, this is a live demo. It takes a little bit of time, right? So this is incredible, though. What we're actually seeing is just on the fly how it's just taking a document and absolutely creating a PowerPoint to it. That's awesome.
It created a PowerPoint a lot faster than I would create a PowerPoint. Let's put it that way.
That is for sure, especially with design and everything else, right?
Yes, absolutely. So it's going to take just a minute here. I did this demo right before we started, and I was very happy with the results that came back. But you'll see it's also adding speaker notes, and so that's something that's fantastic. That's cool. So that it will put in all my slides for me, add speaker notes on different sessions of things I can talk about. I can also go in and say add a new slide. I can go into Designer and I can adjust layouts and different things like that. Since I have had access to Copilot, the designs that they come up with for the slides are improving almost every time I use it. So very excited about what I can see here. You see it's taking the content that was in the document. It's even adding images into my presentation and really making something powerful.
That's incredible.
That's going to work. So I can just tweak it. Inside of Word, a little bit of the same kind of experience. Inside of really any application that you're going to be working with, you can hit Copilot and it's going to open up prompts for you to start using. And so I can come here and say, build an outline for a Power BI introduction training session. and then I can say generate, and it is going to create the content for me. And then within Word, I can go to different spaces within the document, and the Copilot feature will pop up, and I can add things to different parts of the document and so forth. So you see, it's putting this together for me based on just a simple question. Okay. So this could be an outline here. You can even then save this and then go into take it into PowerPoint and make a presentation from a document like we just did there. Beyond that, let's see, we've got Excel here. This is just loads of fun. So I can come into Copilot over here, and it is going to prompt me for certain things. You do have to have your data inside of what they call a table. So you do have to have it formatted a little bit, but once you do, I can say, show me suggestions for formula columns, and it's going to come out and tell me, look at my data, see what it can do, and then help me make new columns, help me move data around, and then it will even highlight different things for me. So it's going to make some suggestions and then basically ask, would you like me to implement these suggestions? So that's the type of thing you can do there. It's great. So if I needed to do a formula, I can talk to it in natural language. So age group, the number of times each group appears in the first column of the table. So that's great. I can say, yes, insert it. So you see, it's helping me know what formulas could be valuable. It's writing the formulas for me, and then it's adding it to my table. So that's pretty fantastic. With very little training, by just teaching your users how to do prompts, you're going to be able to teach them to work more with their data, to understand their data, and to get better results. Okay. And then we have also just the Copilot chat, being mindful of time here, where we can go in and start working with this. So Donald asked a question, does this work with structured and unstructured data in tables? For Excel and stuff, for the formulas and stuff like that, the data has to be inside of structured tables. That doesn't mean other areas of Copilot aren't looking at it, but for doing some of the formula things I was just showing, that's where it has to be in the structured tables. Yeah. Okay. So this could be great. I could say, give me 10 compelling taglines on a presentation that I had. And so it's going to be interesting because I don't remember what's in that presentation, but we'll see. It will give us, the taglines for what we have. Yeah, it was a SharePoint one. So if I wanted something like this, I needed it to come up with great ideas quickly, I can do that. What other files do I have that relate to this? It's going to go out and find anything there that may be relevant. Okay. And then what's great about it is it's going to give you these little notes inside of it. And so these are the sources. And so it's going to let you go, okay, well, if I've got it in there, let me go open that document. And so wherever you're getting Copilot and it's giving you these things, you can easily source it because it's going to show you, hey, I pulled it from these different things. Or when it gives you a summary of your Outlook or something like that, it's going to allow you to link back and drill out to the larger data sources. It's also going, oh, go ahead, Demetrius.
No, I was going to say, which I think is phenomenal in terms of when you're asking yourself, hey, if I thought I had a document like this, it actually show you the source of that document. You can go look at that document and determine if what you're doing is duplicative or not. So a lot of great use cases.
Yeah. And it's really cool here how it's even finding the great content inside of, my beautifully named documents like presentation 13 versus key points 1. So you could tell this is a demo environment and I'm in there a lot playing with data. I have weird names for things, but it's still finding things based on the content and pushing them out to me in a very structured, easy way to access. I do also like that it's going to give us a lot of prompts. So even just getting started, it can help me know what I want to do. Like it's going to give me suggestions of what I can do. And it does this in a lot of different places. I'd venture to say that it does it more inside of just the regular chat and Excel, which is great. Inside of PowerPoint, it does it a little bit and kind of guides you. It's a little less inside of Word, but I think that's because it's maybe just not there yet, or because Word can be such a universal tool. Everyone uses it a little bit differently. So it might be hard to come up with some common things for them to start with. But I think over time, we'll start to see, based on how people are using it, it's going to pre-prompt us for all of these. Susan, great question. She says that it's available for the desktop or just the web version. It is going to be available for both. I'm showing on the web version just for simplicity on my environment. And then if you have multiple accounts, so for instance, I log into multiple 365 tenants. So I have to just make sure that I've got the licensing correct for the tenant that has the Copilot access. So it is available in the client and that should work beautifully for everyone who's doing it. So we can create an FAQ here on a document. And if I do this, it's going to come into the same document I was looking at before, and then going through it to create an FAQ for me. So this is fantastic. Let's say you're writing a new policy guide, you have a new large document that you want to do, and say, okay, let me make an FAQ on this for me. We get asked that a lot when we're doing migrations or different things like that. And so this is a great tool to help you, just get that starter content. And then you can always tweak it and make additional changes to it. It also gives us this great copy button here. So if I need to use it somewhere else, they do make it very easy to copy and paste between different areas. Okay. Inside of Teams, you also get the chat, but you see that's very much like the 365 chat window that was in the other browser. So those are some of the demos that I have. Yeah. Are there any questions or anyone else on the team had something specific you want me to demo? We can open that up. We also have Outlook.
Yeah. That was a great overview. If there's anything in Outlook you can show, that'd be kind of cool. Like summarize the last 10 days emails or something.
Yeah, it would be great if I could do that, but because I'm in a demo environment, that I don't really have emails going back and forth with people, so it would be a very boring summary. But it's great here because I can do coaching. And so this is going to help me write better emails by saying, hey, how would people take this? Are they going to take this negative? Is it positive? So they're going to show different things there. It's going to coach me, give me suggestions on how to do it, or I can say draft with Copilot. I want to do a summary of my latest project. And it's going to go through and put together even a draft for me. I don't really have a lot of information that I put into that. And so this is where you're going to see that I didn't really have a great prompt, so it made some things up for me. It made some assumptions. So now I could go in there and complete it, but we're working hard to meet our goals and major milestones, but it didn't really know much about that project. So if I would have, pointed it to a project plan, pointed it to a site or something and said, I want to send an email summary about this, the more I put into it and the better I prompt, the better results I'm going to get out of it that are meaningful. But even if I don't, I'm still going to get jump starts and different things like that. And so it can be my Copilot where I can get a start and then I can take over and pilot the whole scenario. And then on end user, I'm going to let Demetrius or Ken grab that question.
Which one's that? The one that just in the chat?
So I do think the question just for everyone who hasn't seen is, do you see client institutions rethinking high-level permission groups as they think about how incidental access to data and docs may reduce effectiveness of Copilot for users? And I think that it'll start with probably the opposite, right? Meaning the primary concern as I talk to educators and other senior executives in various roles across the country, it seems to be the primary concern is inadvertent data exposure. And that's why we talked about some of the data governance and hygiene things. But I also think that, as based on your role in terms of effectiveness of Copilot for you or for the users, it will probably be making sure that you have access to data that you need to specifically. That's going to be even more important for you to be effective in your role, right? So Copilot will actually, based on what you have access to and everything else, it will go out automatically and see what you have permissions across through your M365 environment and be able to assist you in that way. I don't know how it will change them and say, hey, from an effectiveness level, I think the concern is coming from the opposite in terms of, am I oversharing? Or am I granting them too much access? Hope that helps.
Yeah, yeah. We had a couple other questions. One was about any perspectives about licensing that large institutions or large organizations, and the cost of Copilot. Obviously you're gonna have to. We can't really answer those questions for you, but I would obviously strongly advise you to talk to your account executive at Microsoft to talk about, how would it be possible to buy licenses for 30,000, 40,000 students or whatever you're looking for there. I'm sure they're willing to work with you on something there. So just definitely talk to your Microsoft folks on the licensing questions for large quantities and that kind of thing. There was another question about AI Builder consumption report providing metrics for various Copilot iterations across the environment or just Copilot platform. Not sure we have a good answer for that one. We'll have to go ahead and research that one, and we'll get back to you, Joseph. We'll definitely take that offline and get you an answer immediately, unless somebody wants to come off mute and give us the answer. But I don't think we have a quick answer for you. At least that would be thorough enough for that answer. All right. What other questions do we have? Let's go back to the chat. Yep, I think that was a good question that you just got there. Demetrius, do we have access to Studio with Copilot for M365 or custom GPT creation? Tim Howell asked that question.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that question here. And can you clarify, are you talking about like GitHub or Copilot or?
Copilot Studio, I guess, yeah. So I think Copilot Studio, I believe, is a free license because obviously it's about creating Power Platform and creating new applications and things like that, and that's obviously encourages use, right? So I believe the Copilot Studio is available for free.
Yeah, we'll have to confirm that though.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
it's
I
not.
just had a follow-up question that on if you're wanting to create a custom.
Yeah, that's different than if you're
Version.
creating a custom LLM. Yeah.
Happy follow-up with the Tim on that one.
Yeah, we will definitely follow up there. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap up this. Jen, that was a great demo. Thanks for chiming in there and doing that live demo there. That was really cool. I can't wait to get my hands on playing with it even more on a daily basis. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. Again, if you, as always, if you need to get onboarded to the YouAlreadyOwnIt program, please contact Michelle McGraw. Her contact information is right there at the top right corner. And again, if you're new to the YouAlreadyOwnIt program, we have a lot of free workshops broken down by these different categories. One thing I want to point out that we do actually have a free workshop on Azure Cognitive Services OpenAI. So if you're a organization looking at doing something like that, by all means, reach out to Michelle and we'll see if we can get you set up. But there's lots of other great things in here. I talked about the licensing review, lots of Azure Essentials workshops and Office 365 workshops. So at Planet, we want to be your pilot for Copilot. If you have any questions, please reach out to your account executive or cloud strategist. And if you're ready to take the next step and want to talk readiness for Copilot, we are here for you as a Microsoft Jumpstart partner for Copilot and a Microsoft AI partner. Well, that's a wrap. We hope to see you next February the 22nd. Thank you for joining us. And thanks to our speakers, Demetrius Rogers, Jen Mason, Pierre-Yves Delacote, and Keith Ward for monitoring our answers and questions and getting them into the chat window. If there's something that we were not able to get to, we will definitely follow up with you. And with that, I think I just saw one more question come in. Let me see. Hold on. There's a hand by Jill Snyder. So let's go ahead and Jill, go ahead and come off mute and go ahead and ask your question.
I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button. I do not have any at this time. Sorry, Ken. Thank you.
False
No
alarm.
problem.
Lower the hand. All right, thank you.
That was easy.
That's good. All right. With that, I think we are done. Yep, I think we're done. So we appreciate your time again. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.